Hello everybody, it's Wednesday the 13th of January 2021 and the weather's awful, the light's so poor we have the house lights on, and I thought I'd have a look at my diaries again. There was some interest from the last video I did, and look at the 1977 diary. Well, one of the things that I've probably mentioned before, is that I was in the Barnsley Bird Study Group, and the meetings used to be held. Something's just dropped off the camera. I hope it's still working. Sorry about that. The meetings used to be held in the evenings after work, and we went wherever we could. At the beginnings there was only a few small members, a small amount of members I should say, and then as membership grew we went into other buildings, and one of the buildings was where I worked at the college in Barnsley, in the theatre upstairs. And so on this particular evening after work, the Bird Study Group had a film show, and they were showing kingfishers, water rail, and a little bittern. Now I'd never seen a little bittern, and I've never seen a little bittern all those years on. So it was very interesting to me to be able to see these birds. But while I was there I met a lady called Mrs. Dobson. I mention this lady because she was in her own right a very, very clever person, and Mrs. Dobson was in the Barnsley Scientific and Naturalist Group, and she knew all about plants. She knew plants you could eat, wild plants that is, and she knew all about grasses. So I'd picked a few grasses at Winterset, where I was bird watching at that time. Didn't know what they were, so I took them along to show Mrs. Dobson, and she not only told me what they were, from without looking in books, she told me all about the flower and the grasses of that time. Of course I forgot all about it, but what a wonderful brain this lady had. I'm just looking through my notes as I'm speaking, and I also had a friend called Bernard Tinker. Sadly Bernard's passed away now, but Bernard was a keen enthusiast of railway information. He actually worked on the railway as well, and so Bernard gave me lots of information about how the railways went on in that time, that period of time. But it's worth a mention, and probably that's why I wrote it in my notes, that at that time the village I live in, Royston, not only had pits, as I've mentioned before, slag heaps and pits, they also had their own train sheds and repair sheds, and we used to be able to go and have a look at the trains sometimes if we were escorted by someone who worked there, such as Bernard. And I thought it was fascinating because the trains had got to be warmed up first. You couldn't just pull them out of the stations that they were in, the covers that were under, and you couldn't just set off and drive away. They had to be, engine had to be warmed up, preheated, and all sorts of things like that. Coal, of course. And they used to drive the coal from the pits to various places locally, maybe Hull and places like that, and the coal would be shipped away on boats across the continent, I think, at that time. So it was very interesting, really, to be part and parcel of that era. There were lots of things to see. Sometime, if I can remember, I will point out when I'm up the landscaped area of Rabbitings where the train sheds used to be. There's still a bit of land set aside, and not far away from the train sheds was also the railway station, and we could go on a train from Royston down to Cornwall, which was really fantastic. And I've been trying for years and years now to get that station open. I've written to 3 past Prime Ministers, and I've tried various ways of getting support to generate support to try and get the station open again. And my view is that if the station was open, people who live in villages like the one I am in, which is a bit isolated, could go and find work easier, and they could easily get to the city at one side of where I live, and the city, 2 cities to the other side where I live. One is Sheffield, and the 2 other cities are Wakefield and Leeds. And so it would be very easy to get on the train and go to these cities without having to go by car. Now, I have said in vlogs in the past that if I was to set off to go to Leeds by car now, not knowing Leeds, I would find it to be very traumatic. I wouldn't know where I was going, and it would take, I think, depending on the traffic at the time, maybe about an hour and a half to get to Leeds from Royston by train. It is estimated it would be probably half that time.